Hello all, this is Ahron Wohlgelernter, and I'm here with my co-host, Rabbi Wohlgelernter, aka The Father, and this is Around the Shabbos Table. Around the Shabbos Table podcast was created to bring you our thoughtful conversations on a wide range of topics that a Jew encounters throughout his or her life. Our dream is to share some of our joy of being a Jew by breaking open some of these ideas and showing the beauty and relevancy that are sometimes hidden behind them. Don't be fooled by the name. Shabbos was not desecrated in any way, shape, or form in the production of this show. This podcast is part of the Intentional Jew Podcast Network, a growing network of the greatest Jewish podcast content trying to make Judaism more intentional. I want to welcome onto today's pod my brother, Rabbi Yaakov Wohlgelernter from Houston, Texas, where although he does not officially practice his title of rabbi in his community, his role is integral to deepening the community's connection to Hashem and mitzvos. His shul, which is called Haimish, is, and I think should be, a model of a shul where they're committed to teaching the next generation of Jews to love Hashem. If you're interested in reaching out to Yaakov about setting up such a model in your community or creating chaburas that are focused on God and his mitzvos, you can always reach out to him through the Haimish.org website. That's HEIMISH.org, Haimish, Haimish.org. And you can reach out to him to see how that's done, because it's a very important part of a community and a community building. So he definitely knows how to do that and is a wonderful addition. And we're excited to have him here today, because he brings some of that fire and some of that love that he gets to spread in his community to you, to the listeners. So let's get around this Shabbos table, baby.
Welcome, Yaakov. It's
Thank you. Wow, what an intro.
It's so awesome.
By the way, I don't think we've been around the Shabbos table with each other, Yaakov, for over a year. Way over a year.
You have to ask Yonah. You have to ask Yonah. He'll tell you the exact date. But yeah, I think it's been a while that we've been around the Shabbos table.
Well, for me, this is a particular thrill to have two of my children around the Shabbos table. Is really beautiful. I'll tell you, I think that last night, I was mentioning today in one of my shurim that it was a very sad day yesterday. It was just, and we were just talking about it, beating it around a little bit. It was a very sad day, a very profound day. There was a lot that went on, and there's a lot really to discuss and process. But I think that for many people, there was sort of an event that happened yesterday, which was something that unnerved many people. And was left field, I think, for every person, those at the Levayas and those that were watching it or heard about it today.
Are you talking about all Levayas, or one in particular?
No, in one in particular. I'm talking about the Levayas of Rabbi Dr. Twersky, which you go, you wanted to hear Hespedim, you expected to hear Hespedim, you expected to hear his children, you expected to hear, from people that were going to enlighten us about a person who we all know about. A person who we all know about, and who we're all. Yeah, wait a second. So you just take that whole thing out. A person who we all know about, and we're all. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just going to go back to a person that we all know about, and that we've read his books. We know who he is. We could have explained, who he was and what he stood for, and it's pretty clear to everybody. But from the people on the inside who were waiting to hear what they had to say, to give us a real recap of his life and a recap of who he was. And then I think it was a son-in-law or a son that stood up and said that Zaidi said that there are no hespedim, and that when we carry the mita, we have to sing his song, Haishia Semecha. So the first bombshell I think most people didn't know that
That it was his song, yeah.
that it was his song. But to see them walking and singing, to me, that was more profound and powerful than any hesped could have been. And it was written that the reason why he wanted that song sung at his Levaya is because he said that song, Dafka, that song, has brought so much simcha and joy to people, has uplifted people so much that maybe perhaps the schusim that come from that song should be melavehim to the Olam Emes. I found that to be so incredibly profound. And Ahron pointed out to me today that his whole life was about Hoshia Esamecha. His whole life was about saving people and really about uplifting the Jewish people. And what more beautiful thing could there have been? And you would have thought, like if I described it, it's weird. It's weird. People are singing on the way down to you're being buried. But it was so not weird. I toss it out there. I just want to hear some comment.
Yeah, no, it was super interesting, not typical. I think I remember when I was in high school and there was a Levaya of a musician in Baltimore. I don't even remember who it was, but I remember like guys coming back from the Levaya. I didn't go. I remember guys coming back from the Levaya and being like, they didn't do Hespedim. The kids got up and sang his favorite songs. And that was his compositions, a similar idea. Like this is how they felt like, that it would go travel with him to the next stop. But it was super interesting watching Rabbi Twersky's Levaya. And,
it almost felt like they were dubbed, right? Like the song was dubbed because everyone was wearing masks and you couldn't see. Felt like it was dubbed like one of those Boreolam videos.
This is true. Or the guys with the guys. It was chilling. It was really interesting. And the whole, the Hoshia Samecha was, what he lived his life with, like you said. But the Amecha part, right? The fact that the connection that we have to these people is because in the end of the day, we're all under the same Hashem. And that being able to identify that part, how that person, wherever they are, right? Like they say in the Sfarim, the pchusim, the lowest of the low, right? No matter where they're holding, but to be able to identify in them, to see that little spark and to see something worthwhile to invest in, was what he lived with. So you talk about going into the next world and being a Melitz Yosher, right? This is a person who during his life was a Melitz Yosher for the Jewish people, a person who during his life brought so much hope and positivity into the world. I just want to mention, is he the author of Charlie Brown? Because in my mind, there's some connection. I think that's my memory of his books, his shelf of Sfarim in growing up in La Jolla, was that one of them had an interesting cover, and I think interspersed was a bunch of Charlie Brown. I think he has a whole Torah about Charlie Brown, probably contained in that book, if I had to guess. But I was probably 7 years old, so all I remember was, whoa, that's so cool. Like a rabbi doctor wrote this comic? That's amazing.
Yeah. It was always on the shelf on our table next to Daddy's seat in the shul. In the old shul, it was on the shelf. There was a yellow one right there. Oh gosh, I spent many a years reading Charlie Brown. It was my ayin.
Reading Charlie Brown during davening.
I wasn't reading Rabbi Twersky.
It had a special spot. It's amazing. It's amazing. He wrote a book, which until yesterday, someone put a picture of, some of the books that they had of his in their library, and someone posted a picture, and it only clicked that he also wrote a book called For Hasidic Masters. It's a small book, the short book, like a pocket book, but in there is biography and teachings of the Chos of Lublin. So I picked that up early on in the Heimish library collection, growing, because I thought it would be good to have it kicking around. And people told me, like, I read through that and it's amazing. It was like the next volume of the unpublished volume of Aryeh Kaplan's book, right? the Hasidic masters. We're kind of extending it to 4 more. And I saw the chozes in there. Okay, so I got to pick it up. Yeah, people, we have that book in our library. And there's many important books of his that, I think he was, it's the greatest people that are so far ahead of their times. And you sometimes you only appreciate them really afterwards, or when you look back on their collection of work. But he was someone who understood what it means to be a Jew struggling in the world. And I think we're getting, as a society, I think we're coming either more to grips with it, or now we have Ami and Mishpacha, so we get to hear about the problem, right? But at least we're actually, as a Jewish society, it's part of our conversation, is that people have struggles and people make mistakes, and sometimes they're very, very ugly mistakes, and they can look very ugly. But the fact that it's worth it to be metapel with those people, right? It's worth it to deal with people like that. It's now becoming part of our conversation more and more, which is a beautiful thing. I think he was way ahead of the game because he understood that a long time ago. He understood that that's what Judaism teaches, right? That's what it teaches. This is go back to Moshe Rabbeinu. He was able to uncover every single person what the beauty was in them and bring them the Torah for them on their level, right? Everyone at the bottom of our Sinai, it wasn't like, this, we like to think about it, like rank and file, like you see like a Korean military parade, right? Like everyone's like in line, but like it was a mess down there at the bottom of the mountain, but he brought the Torah down to them. He was able to uncover that. That's what leaders do, was able to uncover the beauty in every person. So he was way ahead of the game, and it's worthwhile to spend time appreciating his life and his work.
Right. So talking about Tziztis, but there's an interesting halacha.
Who's talking about Tziztis?
When it comes to when you're in a basic kfaros, you should put your Tziztis in, and
concept of log l'rosh,
right, is not to upset the niftar, the person who died, to not upset them. They can't be Mekayim, they can't do this mitzvah now. So you put away yours, not to rub it in their face. And it brought up this, this sort of my thought process was, why do we have our tzitzis out that we put them in? And it sort of brought up this whole concept and idea of tzitzis. And it's really something we want to break out here with you, Yaakov, as well. This idea of where to put your tzitzis when you wear them, and what tzitzis signify. I'll break it in that the halacha is, and it's unclear really in terms of the halacha what you should be doing, but it seems like in the Mishnah Berurah it says that you should keep them. You should keep the tzitzis of your tzitzis that you wear underneath your talis cotton. You should definitely keep it. You should keep the tzitzis out, and there are those that keep it inside, and there's more Kabbalistic reasons to keep it inside and outside, and it's unclear what one should do. And I wanna open up that discussion of how do you feel about where do your tzitzis belong for you? And it's interesting that tzitzis as a whole has become this sort of external sign of how religious you are, of how big your tzitzis are, and what color your tzitzis are, and where you wear them, and how you wear them. It's grabbed onto a lot of these externals, which unfortunately lots of our Judaism has become, and our ritual has become very external. But if you look at the Makor, the reason why we wear our tzitzis out is because you should see them. And you should remember the mitzvah is internal. It's very personal. This is a personal mitzvah. And yet we take something that's so personal and it's become so, externally a sign of your religious observance. So you can go either way, but how do you feel about, where do your tzitzis belong?
Your tzitzis belong on your body. They belong on your body. What I mean is not necessarily the inner layer, but they you belong to wearing them. And for me, it doesn't make a difference if you wear them on the outside or the inside, as long as you're Urisamosam, as long as you keep them in front of your eyeballs. and you keep whatever the message is of Tzitzis that you want to internalize, which the basic message, obviously, like you said, in the Pasuk, right? That the Tzitzis are meant to create some sort of awareness of the mitzvot, okay? As long as you keep that awareness, or if you have other meanings that you find in Tzitzis, which there's a lot of strings and a lot of knots, so you can find a lot of meaning in it, right? But whatever meaning it is you find in it, as long as you keep that in front of your eyeballs, in front of your brain, keep thinking about that, and you're doing what you need to do, whatever you're more comfortable with. I stopped wearing shirts, so now my tzitzis go on the outside because I wear an undershirt, a shirt on top. Look, covered the podcast, I put on a sweatshirt. But, everyone, they say like they don't say it. I say like everyone snapped a little bit in Corona. Like different people snap different ways. So I just stopped wearing shirts. Okay, whatever. It makes it all the more special when you put on your Shabbos shirt, though. That's I just think that you have to find something in Tziztis that you can keep with you, definitely while you're wearing your talis katan, and when you're wrapping yourself in your Tziztis, and when you're davening wrapped in Tziztis, you have to have a message. I like to get things down into one-liners, because I feel like we move through the motions so quickly that if you have a whole Torah that you want to think about while you're atifas, talis, then it looks kind of weird because you have it all wrapped around your head and you're trying to untangle yourself for hours at a time because you have a whole Torah that you're trying to think about. So get it down into one line that you can think about as you're doing that motion, because in the end of the day, it's 7 seconds, 10 seconds that you're wrapped in your talis. Have something that you can think about and keep that in front of your eyes. That's how I think about it.
So what's your one-liner for Tzizis?
My one-liner for Tzizis. My one-liner for Tzizis is like this. I think that Tzizis in the perfect sense are connected to wool, right? Tzitzis are made out of wool, right? And the wool connects us back to the aisle that was on the seh, that was on Akedas Yitzchak, right? The seh. And what Yitzchak asked was, Aye haseh la'ola, right? Where's the seh? Where's the seh? Yitzchak was putting into our DNA a constant search that we go through in life, a constant question of Aye that we ask in life. This is my one-liner, by the way, right?
Right, you sound like Daddy.
You tell him, okay, we want you to speak for 2 minutes.
20?
20 minutes later. And this explains our question that we had at the beginning. So,
and if you were listening,
no. Yes, exactly. So this Aye is coded into our Tziztis in many different ways. This is a Torah that I learned from Rabbi Nassim. This Aye, this constant search, is coded into our Tziztis. And when I put on Tziztis, I think of the fact that in any direction I go, the four tzitziot, meaning in any direction I go, north, south, east, west, any step I take should be a step towards answering the Aye. Where is like Aye Mikom Kavodo? It's the same word, right? Just searching out, seeking out Hashem. And I think that, it changes the way you obviously deal with going to work. It changes mundane tasks that you're doing. It changes interactions with your children and hopefully your spouse. It changes your, day-to-day going, just mundane, going shopping. If everything is flowing into this, every step I take, Aye, I'm searching for Hashem. I'm searching, and it's a lifelong search. It's a constant question that we have is Aye, and that's, for me right now, that's what I'm meditating on for the moments that I'm putting on my tzitzis, holding them by Shema. I'm holding my Aye. I'm holding my quest, my ever eternal search, the eternal search of the Jewish people for Hashem in everything. And that's so I whittle it down to the word Aye, and I ask myself, am I actively searching? Am I waiting for it to come to me and smack me in the face? Or am I asking the question, Aye, where can I find Hashem in this? Where is Hashem in this experience, in this moment, in this interaction? Where is Hashem? That's my meditation. That's my main Tzitzis meditation.
That meditation changes the Tzitzis from being an act to being something that has a depth to it and has a connection to God. And that's what's missing from a lot of our own. I mean, each one of us, our avodas Hashem, that it's really about avodah, not necessarily about avodas Hashem, not necessarily something that connects us, because we are stuck a lot on the outside of things, and we're not in this mode of looking for aye. And I'll tell you a beautiful Maisa. Let's say about the Shabbos Table, that the Shabbos Table was once in a carriage, and he said to the carriage driver, he said to him, "Take me to a certain place." So he said, "Okay, but I'm going to go this way." So he says, why taking that route? It's a long route. He says, because every time I go through this town, so the people on the sides of the road, they sort of like even wait for me, and they throw garbage at me, dirty garbage bans and wastewater, and it's disgusting. And I've tried to get them to stop, and I can't get them to stop, so I don't go that way anymore. Shabbos Table says to him, "Go that way, don't worry about it." So they're going that way. Right before they get to the town, the Shabbos Table tells him to stop. He stops, and the Shabbos Table puts on his tefillin. And as they go through the town, nothing. So the guy says to the Shabbos Table, like, how'd you pull that off? So he quotes him the pasuk, and he says that they will see the tefillin on your head, and they will be afraid of you, and you have nothing to worry about. It's guaranteed, it's going to work. So the next time somebody gets into the cart and says to this wagon driver, says, "Take me to this town." The wagon driver says, "Okay, no problem." And he takes him the short way. Right before the town, he stops, he puts his tefillin on. He drives through the town. As he's driving through the town, they dump garbage on him. They throw stuff out of windows. They throw the most disgusting things at him. He goes back to the Shabbos Table and he says to him that, "You lied to me. Said you told me that they're going to see you. They're going to see you, and the name of God is upon you, and they're going to be afraid of you. And you told me, Elu tefillin shebarosh." So I put my tefillin on, and it didn't help. So the Shabbos Table looks at him and says, "I didn't say Elu tefillin ala rosh. I said Elu tefillin shebarosh. The tefillin that are inside the head, not the tefillin that are outside the head." And that story has always stuck with me. So whenever you talk about things like this, you talk about your tzitzis, and you talk about the meaning of tzitzis and the aye, which is gorgeous. It's gorgeous. But it reminds us that the tzitzis can't be, like you said in the beginning, can't be on our body. The tzitzis have to be in our body. And that's why whatever makes you comfortable, tzitzis in, tzitzis out, the ikar is that the tzitzis are on and that you're conscious of them and that you feel them inside of your body. And that's a critical thing. I'm curious if you can respond to this, but I feel, Ahron alluded to it, and I feel that a lot of times, and maybe you can enlighten us also to what the power of tzitzis is, that it seems to be frightening to people. A lot of times I hear people say tzitzis is, now it's really only a zecher. We don't really have, it's not really a tzivoy, only because we don't wear garments like that. We don't wear four-cornered garments. So Chazal told us that we have to wear it so that we don't forget the mitzvah of tzitzis, but it seems to be almost like a sticking point for a lot of people. And that there almost seems to be like, the war on tzitzis. And there seems to be a fear of the tzitzis. And I was just curious where you see that sits, and how does understanding the inside of tzitzis, how does that help?
There's an element of tzitzis that signifies avdus, and it seems to have carried through, like this.
What do you mean avdus? You mean like a slavery to a ritual?
Yes, and it can become that, or it's a sign of I'm in the army, right? Like I'm in the army, and some people at times probably feel a lot of pressure to live up to certain ideals as being a member of the army, of Hashem's army, right? or call it being an eved or being in the army, whatever you call it, is being part of the group that are there to be Avdei Hashem. And I think that people, it's there without ever saying it, and I think some of the resistance comes from that. If it's deeply encoded, if what I'm saying is true, is deeply encoded into the Tziztis, you should be able to sense it even unspoken, and therefore that resentment maybe to that experience can present itself. I think also it's like another idea. I mean, Tziztis goes with you wherever you are, right? They say like it's a lot easier to take a yarmulke off and stick it in your pocket if you need to than Tziztis, right? So if you're wearing them, and it's really part of the same idea. I mean, if you're wearing them, it says something about you. Definitely if you're wearing them and it's visible, it says something about you. And it creates a certain restraint. We talk about Tziztis being connected to controlling what our eyes see, right? And the Tziztis is that lo sasur acharei levavchem acharei nechem, right? The Tziztis is like a little bit controlling, right? On some level, it's a little bit boxes you in, and so much like a horse, when you're trying to put the blinders on, it may shake its head and say, I don't like this because naturally I get to look all over. But what are we saying? What does the guy riding the horse say? Why do I need to put these blinders on you? Because we got a mission. We have a mission, so we need to stay focused on the mission. So maybe like coded into Tziztis is the same message, and sometimes it might feel a little better for our body to be able to, let our eyeballs go a little bit to the side sometimes. And so I think that, as people grow up, I don't know, I've noticed a pattern personally and with other people that I spoke to, like this, like you could get to a point where you just stop wearing Tziztis. Like it really bothers you that much, right?
Right. That's what I always wonder.
Experience that?
I understand if you're playing sports.
It becomes a thing that you like drop. What do you say? It becomes a thing that you like drop. Like what? Like you're from, like you're a regular from person. Like it's like everything else is good. Like you like drop Tziztis, and it's like this. There's something in Tziztis that says I'm part of it. I'm focused. There is a master, right? There's a balabira, and I'm focused on the goal. And there's something coded in there that people maybe are sensing and feeling, and therefore are, not doing this mitzvah until they can come back around and realize they're part of the team.
I think once you come back around, it's a true point. And especially if at its truest form is what you're saying, that Urisa Mosam, that Tzitz reminds you of what you're supposed to be doing, and therefore it's much more binding than even a Shabbos or a tefillin in a sense, because it's with you all the time, and it's Urisa Mosam. And even with your idea from Rabbi Nassan that it's an IA, people don't want to live in an IA. They don't want to live in a state of unknown and in a state of searching and finding and admitting that maybe you don't have everything. And if that's what you have, that's what your tzitzis are, then that's what it reminds you of. And it's it almost shows how strong the tzitzis are, because the stronger opposition, it shows the deeper we're connected to it. But I do believe that when you come back to it, and you mentioned this earlier with Corona as well, that you stop wearing shirts, and you mentioned it, just throwing it out there, but to pick up on it as well, that when you put your Shabbos shirt on, it means something. And it's a process that I think is so important. Now, I'm not saying stop keeping Shabbos so you appreciate Shabbos, but there is an aspect when you try it in things in your life, that when you stop doing something, you can stop it with smaller things and you come back to it. I personally used to never understand kissing your tefillin. When you took your tefillin off, I don't really mean it. And when I was single, I didn't really understand what a kiss was anyway. So what am I kissing my tefillin for? It didn't make so much sense to me. So I stopped, and I stopped to come back to it. And when I started realizing what tefillin were and missing that relationship, now I can kiss it, and now I can feel like I'm putting something away and I'm missing something for 24 hours until I put it back on. Same thing as with your shirt. Then you could actually appreciate that it's lekavod Shabbos and not lekavod me looking beautiful because I don't wear it during the week to look beautiful. I wear it for Shabbos. So then you could appreciate it. Now, again, this has to be taken, don't not keep Shabbos to appreciate Shabbos. You can try that in your life. And I think it's a stronger way to come back. And then you ask yourself, what am I doing this for?
Can we do it? Can we do it a different way? Meaning, can we head off the problem by working into our chinuch meaning in the actions? Like, there's always a struggle I have, right? Like, you get kids used to at 3 years old to wear tzitzis, right? So they're well used to wearing tzitzis before their mind is able, possibly, I don't know, before their mind is able to really understand an Aye or an Avdos or a Tzivas Hashem. Like, they're well on their way to just doing this by rote. Are we almost doing them a disservice by starting too early without meaning? Or, I mean, that's a valid question, but on the other hand, the system is set up like this, right? Minhag Yisrael Torah. Like, this is the way we do it. We start chinuch at 3. We start with Tziztis. So, but do we need to adapt our message that we want them to have as adults to work that in even to the chinuch? Or are we just teaching rote actions?
So I think we're teaching rote actions. I would love to talk about this as its own subject. I think that's the only way to really teach mitzvahs. But I think we're waiting to infuse them with meaning too late. There is an idea to wait until a child is ready, but I think that we're doing that and we miss the mark. And then our kids are now in questioning stage before they have any tools to answer their own questions. And I think that somewhere around bar mitzvah is where that the chinuch of the regular mitzvahs that they're already used to, the Birchas Hamazon and the Tefillin and Torah and Kriyas Torah, and all the stuff that they're now picking up and getting excited about. That's the moment to start filling that with with some meaning. When I taught, you remember the Bar Mitzvah Club, so I tried.
I remember cereal.
Cereal, yeah.
Was there more than that?
Yeah.
I remember donuts sometimes.
Right.
Entenmann's.
All right, different generation. You got donuts. We had Fruit Loops. That's it. From last week.
Right. But what we tried, it wasn't from last week. It was actually from a month ago. But what we tried to do is to start to fill the tefillin with meaning, not just, I only worked on the mechanics of tefillin at the very end, and to put some meaning into it. And it wasn't totally successful in that, a lot of those kids were not ready yet for that. But nevertheless, we do need to think about giving them that kind of meaning at a much earlier stage. I wanted to say something. I want to say 3 things, but I wanted to say about, the mitzvah of Peah is probably one of the hardest mitzvahs, they say. And the reason that it's such a hard mitzvah is because it's in the mitzvah of Peah that you make an absolute statement that I don't own everything. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu owns it, and he told me exactly what to do with it, and I can't touch it. I can't do anything with it. I leave it. I have to stand where all the umlale chayim, right? All the people that I, perhaps might look at with a little disdain, come through and take my stuff. They don't walk out and say thank you. There's no hakara. There's no recognition that it belongs to somebody else. And I just have to stand there and watch this. And I'm watching this because I'm not its owner. That concept of saying that I don't run the show, that's a very difficult concept for a person on any level, even a person who's, comfortable with their observance. That's a difficult thing to say. And every single person has a different payah. For some, it's tzitzis. For others, it's a diktuk, it's a care in another mitzvah. Valid. For another, it's a lulav and eseg, or it's a sitting in a sukkah, or it's even derabbanans or minhagim. Right, Kiddush Levana, right?
I thought you were going to say Kiddush Club. Some people struggle with Kiddush Club.
But everybody's got that one thing that when they that when they do that, they're in. They made the statement that I don't own everything and I'm giving over to God, and I think that's when we talk about tzitzis. That's a thing that has to be in mind. That with this, I'm saying that my levush, my clothing, like you said, I'm in the army, and you're identifying yourself as a servant of God, and it's complicated. If it's not complicated for you, that means you might not be thinking about it enough. I'm going to just tell you also, there was once a fellow who never showed up to shul, and the one Shabbos he happened to show up, and the Rav said to him, "Shlomo, where you been?" So he said, "Rabbi, you once gave a drasha, and you spoke about how we're supposed to be in the army of Hashem. And some people are the generals, and some people are the sergeants. I'm in the Secret Service."
Very good. Very good. I don't know. This. I mean, we got to talk about it more. But this chinuch thing, especially having just made a bar mitzvah and having a 13-year-old, right? Like you come to the realization. Like first of all, you come to the realization. Like when I was 13, I thought I was right, and you realize how big of a loser you are. But like you got a long way to go.
We still have bar mitzvah pictures from you. Don't worry, nobody forgets what a loser you were.
But I know, but especially, you look back on it, right? Exactly. But like in your own brain, you're in control. Like you like figured it all out, and you're so at the beginning of your developmental stage, and trying to, I took a similar approach with teaching tefillin, which was we got to go through the meaning before we even pick it up.
Right.
We got to understand why this is baked into what we do. But my question is whether or not those things, you mentioned Birch Hamazon, like that's a big one for me. Like I'm still struggling with it. And it's like we were taught to sing a song that somehow was related to Birchas Hamazon, the words, right? Because it ends up being just a series of sounds. Right? It's just a series of sounds that fit into a song, but without any meaning. And the question was I just not listening, or did someone not say it? Right? It's always my question. I mean, like that's my my everlasting. More than Aye was like, how did I miss that? Was I spacing out? But is there a way to work that in? And I think I don't know. I'm leaning towards like I said before, having one-liners. I'm leaning towards trying to figure out what is I'm not going to say the lowest common denominator, right? What's the highest idea that you can whittle out of Tziztis that a 3-year-old can appreciate and start infusing it with meaning from the beginning? Because we put on Tziztis to a 3-year-old and we say, wow, it's so special. And I think that as a 3-year-old, they look at us and they say, you don't really believe that, right? Because you didn't tell me anything special about it. You just put it on and told me, wow, it's so special. I think they see through that.
And then tomorrow you told them that they have to wear it. So then it becomes even worse than just not something special.
Exactly. I don't know. I find that like, you got to be able to infuse it.
The danger of being told things on reasons is that if the reason doesn't make sense or resonate with them, so then they abandon it, and therefore the stages. The stages is that this is what we do. It's kishmak. Good. You're excited about it. They're excited about it. That's going to last for a while. Then at some point, it's not this is why we do it, but you know what's really cool when you put on your tzitzis, you're totally surrounded by Hashem. Wow. You're searching for a message. I'm just giving you a thing, but it's not said as, kid, let me sit you down and tell you why you're wearing your tzitzis. He's not ready for that. He's not ready to be able to process what a why is. But if he knows, wow, I'm surrounded by Hashem, my tzitzis. He gets a little older, you show him that, you know what some people do when they want to remember something? They put a band on their arm, or they tie a string around their finger. Not so many people do that anymore, but there are other things that we do to remember things. So the way that we remember to always be thinking about Hashem is that we put these tzitzis on, and that we're tied into something that reminds us. These kinds of messages that are told them not as a Torah, but are almost as like, like an outcome, a cool outcome of the mitzvah that we're obligated to do, so that it never becomes, this is the reason why we do it. I think the reason is silly, and therefore I'm not going to do it. So you have to balance. Balance that.
I'm less about reasons, more about meaning, infusing meaning.
Right.
So a reason, I agree with you. A reason, you get into the tam of the mitzvah, and when you're talking, cut and dry reason, I agree with you. The reason goes away, that goes away. But meaning, I think you can impart meaning about things to kids as well, and that can stay with them for when they're ready to explore that further. But they always have that, and I just see it by a lot of mitzvahs. I see it by a lot of mitzvahs that we're doing actions and we don't understand, or we've never explored the meaning. Not concerned with the reason, but the meaning behind it, and I think it adds a lot to your. It adds a lot to your dikduk in halacha when you realize that the reason the halacha is not just there to annoy you, right? It's there because there's meaning inside of that action. And if you understand the meaning, even if you don't think about it all the time necessarily, right? At that moment that you're doing the mitzvah, you're not thinking about the meaning, but you're more careful because you know there is meaning. And then it spills over to other areas where you don't know the meaning yet. You say, okay, but if this is the way we do it, there's got to be a reason. I'll explore it when I get time. But, just kind of infusing things with meaning. I think Tziztis is a big one.
So think about, you mentioned Kiddush and Birchas Hamazon. So, think about your Shabbos meal. Think about the things that you could do at your Shabbos meal, that to use your Shabbos meal as a vehicle to teach meaning without lecturing, but to teach meaning. So, you pop a question. Okay, we're making Kiddush. What's Kiddush? And let the 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 10-year-old, let them say what they think Kiddush is, and then you tell them Kiddush is the way we use our words to recognize and to shape, to say, wow, this is beautiful. Because when you say something's beautiful, you feel that it's beautiful. So you remind yourself at the beginning of Shabbos with your words how beautiful Shabbos is. Again, you could say 10 different things, but just those kinds of things, that's the way you get them across. Not at a parent-child learning thing. Because they're not plugged in.
Well, I was going to ask that when did you find that your children were most, and this is open, I'll ask it with Daddy first, but when did you find that your children were most open to the not reasons, but the meaningful, and being able to impart them the geschmack and the enjoyment that you get from the mitzvahs? When do you feel? Did you feel that was at the Shabbos meals?
I feel there were open times at Shabbos meals. There were schmoozing times, just conversation times, where you would talk about things and then just sort of weave it into the conversation. This is what I do. This is why we do it. This is how we do it. This is the meaning behind it. I think it's got to be more casual, and it's got to be more a part of you. And that to me is the most critical thing. That if you look at your child and say, how is my child going to feel inspired about this? And then you look at yourself and you say, well, I'm not particularly inspired about it. That's the thing you have to work on. Because the stuff you're inspired about, they're going to get that. They're going to get that. Unless something else happens to them along the way that sort of veers them, they're going to get that. It's the stuff that you're not inspired about. That's the stuff that they're going to have the hard time with. I say this over, I don't know if I ever told you guys this, but we lived very far away from a shul. And it wasn't a particularly observant shul. It was Orthodox, but it wasn't particularly observant. They had a minyan every morning. The Mincha Ma'ariv was not even a Hava minyan in anybody's mind. And we never went to Mincha Ma'ariv. Now, I'm not talking about Shabbos, I'm talking about during the week. Every single day we went to Shachris. There were many years where before my bar mitzvah, I would go with my father and then he would bring me to school after Shachris. And there was, Shachris was Pashat. But Mincha Ma'ariv, it didn't exist. To this day, I'm totally, I daven as much as I can with a minyan. As I'm a minyan person, But that's only because of halacha. It's not the same kind of emotional tie, because it wasn't something that was pashut in my upbringing. And that's you gotta process that and recognize that if you want these things, you want anything to be part of your child, so then it has
also
to
have
really
to do it.
Has to be part of you. It's not a doing. It's an enthusiasm, a meaning, a feeling, a connection to it.
Feeling it, yeah. Yeah, feeling a real connection, yeah.
When do you find, Yaakov, that your kids are like the most receptive to that? Maybe not even on purpose, but maybe like that your kid came to you and said, showed you that he understands the meaning, and you're like, where in the world did you get that from? Did you ever?
Yeah. Rabbi Juravel tapes.
Okay.
And I know I'm not joking. Like, that stuff sticks in, and for my kids, and what they hear on Nucky Radio, they're constantly telling me, "Oh, you hear that story about this rabbi, this and this rabbi," and they know all the details and everything. It's amazing.
But it's meaningful to them, right? And it
it's
they
meaningful
connect
to them, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, basically, a lot of times those opportunities come at your kids are watching when you least expect it, they say.
Right.
They learn, I don't know, there's some line, I don't know, some cool line about they learn the most from what you didn't want them to learn, or something like that. You have to work on yourself and your relationship with mitzvahs and with avodas Hashem. I think you have to work on it to a level where it's just bursting out of you, and your excitement and involvement is just flowing forth. And that's a constant struggle, because you yourself are allowed to have up days and you're allowed to have down days, and you're allowed to feel times of your life where you're really into it and times of your life where you're not. You're allowed to, but for the benefit of your kids, you better have some up times, because they need to learn from those times, right? When you're feeling like Shabbos is you are so happy that Shabbos is here because you get to connect to the creator of the world. Like, work on that idea and let that flow out of you when you sit down to the Shabbos Suda. And don't let anything get in the way, because those times, those Shabboses when you feel it the most, that's when you get home and the toilet's busted, right? You get home Friday night from shul and the toilet's leaking onto your dining room floor. It's that Shabbos. It's obvious, of course. Obviously, the powers that be, the Yetzer Hara, knows that there's a tremendous ability to have great times, and he knows that those are when he's going to attack you, right? And that's when he's going to attack you. They talk about that by Tziztis also, right? Just to bring it full circle. They talk about Tziztis. The Gemara says that the Rabbi Yochanan called his clothing mechabdusa, right? That your clothing is connected somehow to revealing Hashem's kavod in the world. Something about kavod, and your own kavod is really a reflection of Hashem's kavod. The beauty of the human being and the beauty of our existence is really a reflection of Kvod Shamayim, right? If that's our goal here, is to be Marbek Kvod Shamayim. So, and the fact that we're Tzelem Elokim as well, right? So, your tzittis is your Jewish clothing. It's like your clothing perfected, right? It's like the perfect clothing. Everything else is there's styles. It comes in, it goes out. It's the seasons. I wear this, I wear that. But what's like the perfect clothing is tzittis. So tzittis has to be this, it has to be this experience. It has to be something that you're connected to. And that's, if you are, then I think you can impart that even without saying anything. You can impart that to your kids. They see it's important to you.
What's amazing to me is that Ahron asked this question, when's the time you think your kids are the most open? And I have to, I hedged a little bit only because I don't remember many times where I pontificated to you, where I told you, and any of the kids, where I told you, this is what we do, like to give you a lecture about things. But
I think I got a lecture about beating up my brother one time.
No, that's not.
I got a lecture about that.
That was Parsha.
They never told me they gave you that lecture.
but what would happen is that as you guys became adults, and then you would say things to me like you always said, Dad, or you always, and I'm thinking, when did I say that? But you got what you learned, and the things that you one day will say in my hesped about the things that you got from your father. 99% of those things are not necessarily things that I lectured to you or I told you in straight up. but they're things that you learned from me and from the way I comported myself in my mitzvah observance. And I think that is our most, again, exactly what you just said, Yaakov said it beautifully, that is the most important thing. You have to feel it, and when you feel it, it runs through you, and the words shape inside of your children.
Amazing. Well, you see that it's like not such a simple thing, the tzitzis that you wear and what you wear and where you wear and where you put it. So it's there's definitely a lot to unpack here. And I think we hope to have brought you guys something that's useful. And you see how when we talk about chinuch, we don't just, I'll let you in, Yaakov, in a second. When we talk about chinuch, we're not just talking about the chinuch of your children. We're also talking about the chinuch of yourself and how to teach yourself to do a mitzvah. And these same concepts that are so difficult to understand, like how do I teach my kid? It's also in teaching yourself. And we should always be in that state of IA, of looking, of finding. So Yaakov, you can pull this full circle once again.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that we didn't even get to talk about Tcheles. So we'll have to come back together and talk about Tcheles.
Mitzvah Hashem.
At another time. Mitzvah Hashem. Thanks a lot.
All right.